Lent 2026 is almost upon us. Are you ready? Hi, I'm Mike Mason. This is the Immortal Combat Podcast. The Immortal Combat Podcast is a podcast arm of Viri Christi. Viri Christi is a Catholic lay apostolate devoted to help men attain the full stature of Christ by growing strong in mind, body, and spirit. If you'd like to learn more about our work, you can check us out online at stjosephsociety.org or virichristi.com. All right, gentlemen, this is the Spiritual Combat chapters 1 through 7 reflection for this Lent. As I've said in the last couple weeks, I put a plan together for guys who are interested in doing fasting, prayer, almsgiving this Lent, take on daily intermittent fasting and help to improve in that as their Lenten practice. Some of you have decided to take that up with us. So if you are, that's awesome. We actually started this past Sunday, which was Septuagesima Sunday, so that we could ease our way into a proper 16-hour daily fast beginning Ash Wednesday all the way through Holy Saturday. So that's the plan. I won't talk about fasting as much during this time. I'll talk about it a little bit interwoven in there. But the text we are reading together is this text, The Spiritual Combat by Dom Lorenzo Scopoli. Great book. The copy I have here is from Tan Classics. Excellent book. I actually have 3 copies of this. I have this one I bought initially. Then I got this one. And I actually bought another copy of this because each time I read it, I write so much stuff in the margins that I need a new copy every time. So I have a new copy that I'm plowing through. But what I thought I would do with this Friday podcast for the remainder of Lent is to just discuss about 7 chapters at a time to offer some feedback for guys who are reading it, kind of some thoughts to pass on to you. If you're not reading it, hopefully we'll find some nuggets in there that'll be encouraging to you as you have a good and penitential Lent. And speaking of these Friday podcasts, I'm actually recording this on Friday night because, as all of you busy guys know, sometimes our schedule doesn't cooperate. And I did not get to record this on Thursday as usual. So here I am Friday night. So this is probably in your inbox first thing Saturday morning. So happy weekend, all of you. All right. In The Spiritual Combat, Lorenzo Scopoli, and this is a fantastic book that St. Francis de Sales used to carry with him. In the text, he is encouraging us and giving us guidance on how to engage in spiritual combat. And the way he opens the book in chapter 1 is he talks about what the spiritual life entails so that we have a real clear understanding of what it is and what it's not. And though in the book, he's going to talk a lot about doing fasting and mortification and all these external works, a lot of things we talk about on this podcast very often, he does talk about the fact that the spiritual life does not consist in those things. Now, he will grant, as I will, that those things like fasting, almsgiving, mortification, discipline in the appetites, those are definitely necessary to grow in holiness. They're effective tools to grow in holiness, but they're not what the holiness is. Because there's people that honestly can do those things very well, but be bloated with pride. I mean, think of the Pharisees and Sadducees in the New Testament where Jesus will look at these guys and yes, they fast and yes, they follow the law. And he doesn't even question that they're doing that, but they completely miss the point of it. So Scopoli in the first chapter kind of lays this out and then says, what is the point of the spiritual life? And he says this: the spiritual life actually consists in knowing the infinite greatness and goodness of God, together with a true sense of our weakness and a tendency to evil. In loving God and hating ourselves, and humbling ourselves not only before him, but for his sake before all men. In renouncing entirely our own will in order to follow his. It consists finally in doing all of this solely for the glory of his name, for only one purpose, to please him, for only one motive, that he should be loved and served by all his creatures. Really beautiful. So with the spiritual life, that's what it is. It's acknowledging the goodness and greatness of God. It is forsaking all things in this world to unite ourselves more closely to him so that he can be glorified and loved by all people. Now, to do that well, there's good things like fasting and mortification are important and good and helpful, but they can also distract from it. And so the first thing I want to pass on to you guys is when you're engaging in these spiritual practices, we always need to keep in the forefront of our mind why we're doing this. We are doing it to grow in the knowledge and love of God, and to make and to help express His glory to the world and share His glory with the world. That's the point we're doing these things. We don't fast to lose weight, though that might happen. Um, we don't fast so that we swell in pride because we're better than all the people who don't. No, we are in Lent. We are divesting ourselves of goods of this world to do penance for our former sins and to break attachments with things, break attachments with things in this world, so we can attach ourselves to God. Okay. Now, after chapter 1, when he clarifies what the spiritual life's about, right at the end, he says there are 4 weapons that we need to engage in spiritual combat. The first is a distrust of one's self. Second, confidence in God. Third, a proper use of faculties of body and mind. And fourth, the duty of prayer. Now, in the first 6 chapters, he actually talks about the first 2. So I want to pass on a couple insights on mistrust of self and confidence in God. And then we'll wrap up. And next week, we'll pick up where we left off with doing the next 7 chapters. So, what's he mean by distrust of self? Well, Scopoli talks about the fact that distrust of self is absolutely requisite in the spiritual combat. Okay, we have to distrust ourselves. The distrust of self is littered throughout the scriptures. Okay, and the Psalms talks about the fact that the heart is desperately wicked. Who can understand it? Guys, because we have been born into a state of original sin, hopefully alleviated through our baptisms, but because we live in a fallen world, because we have disordered appetites that try to get us off track and lead us into sinful directions, we can't trust our own judgment. Our minds are clouded in darkness. Okay, they're clouded by sin. Our appetites are pulled towards it. We are not the best judges of what's good for us. And so the starting point of the spiritual life has to be we distrust ourselves to grow in holiness. And in the chapter, Scopoli says this. He gives 4 directives to help us do this. Directive 1, we have to meditate upon our own weaknesses. Guys, in order to grow in love and knowledge of God, you have to not only have knowledge of God, because you can't love what you don't know, but we have to have self-knowledge on what our strengths are, which we'll talk about in future podcasts, because knowing our strengths is a good thing. But we also need to meditate on our weaknesses. Okay, what situations, what people, what sins, what temptations tend to weigh us down? We need to recognize those and admit the fact that we're weak in the face of them. We can't be trusting our own ability to overcome these temptations because we can't do it. So the first piece of advice is meditate on your weaknesses. Second, he says, we must beg God with great humility and fervor, this eminent virtue, which must come from Him alone. So this distrust of self has to come from Him. So we have to beg God to give it to us. Because every time in my life when I'm trying to, I'm a guy who likes setting goals. Okay, workout goals, study goals, spiritual goals, that's fine. But what I found is when I fail to achieve them, when I fail to do follow through, it's because I'm relying on my own strength. When I am conscious of the fact and asking God to help me, sometimes it's not easy to fulfill them, but I always have sufficient grace to do it. And I've recognized this where it's clear God's given me sufficient grace. And then I'll insert my own, I've got this. And then I fall. Okay. We can't do that. So know your own weaknesses, ask God for help. Third, he says we must gradually accustom ourselves to distrust our own strength, to dread the illusions of our own mind, the strong tendency of our nature to sin, and the overwhelming number of enemies that surround us. Okay. So again, I already talked about distrust of self, but we also need to recognize there's enemies around us. The world, the flesh, the devil. The world's trying to drag us down and invest ourselves in things of this world that are perishing. Our flesh, which we carry with us all the time, is trying to drag us down by tempting us for pleasures of food, drink, and sex. And the devil's real. Okay? Demons are real. They're whispering in our ears trying to get us off track. So we have to recognize that we don't have the power to do it, and we're surrounded by enemies. Fourth, he says, as often as we commit a fault, we must examine ourselves in order to discover the vulnerable points. He talks about this in this passage a lot. In this first 7 chapters, he talks about the fact that when we sin, we should not be surprised by that. That's pride. So when we sin, guys, you shouldn't be all distraught and down and, "Oh, I can't believe I did that." No, you can believe you did that. I can believe I did it because we're weak. When we sin, we need to acknowledge it, okay? We need to confess it. If it's a mortal sin, get your butt in the confessional booth and confess it. And then we need to think about, what are our vulnerable points that brought this about? What are the places? What are the times? This would be, we've talked in the podcast in the past on habit loops. Okay. You got to find triggers. What are my triggers that get me to do bad behaviors? Okay. Recognize those, recognize the vulnerable points, and then try to alleviate those problems. Okay. So that's his 4 suggestions with dealing with mistrust of self. He then talks about the fact that we're not mistrusting ourselves for its own sake. So we're not supposed to sit here and go, I can't trust me. I'm weak. I can't be in these places. End of the story. No, as we mistrust ourselves, we're giving God an opportunity to show us how powerful and loving and good that He is. And so as we mistrust ourselves, it's going to create that vacuum, right? I got no trust in me. We need to fill that vacuum with supreme confidence in God. Okay. So in chapter 3, he says, to obtain God's help, we need to arm ourselves with lively confidence. And this is accomplished also in 4 ways. Way number 1, we need to ask for it in humility. I'll speak for myself here, but I think this resonates with a lot of you guys. Man, there's a lot of times I don't get certain graces because I just don't ask. God is literally above us all the time. He's willing to give us the graces we need to overcome our temptations, to achieve tasks, to do tasks that He's asked us to do. And a lot of times we just don't ask. Okay. We need to ask God with all humility for the help we need and trust Him He wants to deliver it. Second, we need to contemplate with ardent faith the immense power and infinite wisdom of God. So really spend time thinking about the fact that He's all powerful, all good. We can cast all of our cares onto Him. We can entrust ourselves completely to Him, and He will not fail and He will not lead us astray. We have to meditate on that. It helps us trust Him more. Third, we need to frequently recall what we are assured of. Okay. No one who puts his trust in God will be defeated. I'm not saying there might not be temporal setbacks. Sometimes God's going to permit us to suffer a little bit, permit us to go down. Why? If we trust ourselves to Him, He's going to build us back up and carry us through. Guys, we will win when we give ourselves completely to God. Jesus says in John 6, I will lose none that the Father's given me. We need to give ourselves completely to Him. Fourth, before attempting to perform any good action or to encounter some failing, we should look at our own weakness on the one hand, and on the other, contemplate the infinite power, wisdom, and goodness of God. We do not want to succumb to presumption. Don't presume you have the ability to do this on your own. When we're trying to do any good work, briefly acknowledge, Lord, I can't do this, but you can. As we distrust self and entrust ourselves to His power, He will reveal to us who He truly is in all His power and all His goodness and all His glory. And that, my friends, is the point of the spiritual life, right? To love God above all things and to make Him known in this world through our lives by being lights of His beloved Son in our world. So, those are some thoughts I had from chapters 1 through 7. This book is dense. It's excellent. If you haven't picked it up yet, or you're not doing the Lent thing with us this Lent, which is fine, no worries. You could pick this book up. I found $10 copies on Amazon. I had it within 2 days. Definitely would be great spiritual reading for you guys as we go through Lent. But the first 7 chapters, it's just packed full of good stuff. I just pulled a couple things from the first 3. So, anyways, we're almost butting up to the 15-minute mark, so I'm going to sign off. I hope you guys have a blessed weekend. I hope this finds you well. As I said in previous episodes, hit the like button, subscribe button, leave comments in there. Help us out with that algorithm to try to get the word out. So, all right, man, have a great weekend. God bless you. I'll talk to you again next time.